Dear Edit, what's the most sadistic thing you've done in The Sims? I enjoyed making the house from heck, not a house of death. A house that was a bee to navigate and took forever to move around. So the Sims would go outside to get up and down stairs, bake dinner and have to go upstairs to wash the dishes, go down a hallway and through a pool to use the bathroom, have to go through the pool to get to the street. The Sims in Sims 3 are quite smart, so it was hilarious watching them go through the house from heck. In the previous 2 they would kill themselves and pee in the hallways. They would kill themselves and pee in the hallways, in that order. Adopted a kid, built a room in the middle of the garden, locked him in there and put floor to ceiling windows all around so he could look at Mother Nature while he starved and everyone could watch him too. Also on that note, I had a pool party whilst he was still in his glass box so he could enjoy watching all the neighbors eat and drink and have fun while he was dying. Yes, this is why I posted this question. Isolated a family into 2 groups. One lived in luxury and the other was closed off with bare minimum to survive and had to watch. Sometimes I'll let one out to pay the bills and rewarded them with one-day-old hamburgers. This sounds like Survivor, Fiji. I created a cheetah's graveyard. Built a female character who lived in a small house covering all her basic needs, and next to the house there was a fenced area. The girl often partied for her neighbors and invited couples over. Then she would try seduce the husbands, and if they fell for her trap they would be acquainted with painful, slow death in doorless room. Their tombstone would be later added in the graveyard. I was 12 by the time but apparently had very specific relationship ethics. I did this too. In The Sims 3, it was fun watching them starve to death. There was a window in their cell, so I'd have my sim eat breakfast and dinner where they could see. Oh boy, let me tell you, I have a sim named William. William is a normal dude, writer-painter, living in a nice, custom 2-story home with his roommate. His conveniently oblivious roommate, because in his spare time, William likes to go out and make friends. Then, he likes to invite his new friends over to his house for a home-cooked meal. This meal is set on the floor in the basement, and once all of William's new friends are in the basement, the meal and the stairs are removed, and William works on one of his novels while 5 people starved to death in his basement over the course of several days. The basement is also full of cheap electronics, which William's friends quickly break, allowing William to level up his handiness skill. Once the Reaper is finished with his work, William takes the urns over to his secondary house, a small shack with no doors or windows. The urns are placed into the basement of this home, with a painted portrait of the deceased hung above each one. Here, dozens of ghosts arise each night, hunting for food they'll never be able to find. Then he buys the deceased's property and sells off everything on it. I've cleared half of the city, and I'm not giving up anytime soon. After reading this thread, mine seems a little vanilla, but basically the moment a character turned old they were dead to me. I then made them do all the mundane upkeep chores so my youthful Sims could do cool stuff. The old Sims usually died from exhaustion or hunger. They'd pee themselves all the time, which was just one more thing they had to clean. That last sentence though. My GF told me the other day that she got her Sim a boyfriend, got her pregnant and then killed him. Didn't know how to react. Sims players must really seem like fascists to people who don't play. I created a lab under my Sim's house, filled it with observation chambers and test subjects. I ran a variety of experiments there. I killed my Sims in every way possible. I ran an experiment with this super loving couple's emotions, had them watch their partner fall in love with someone else and eventually have sex with someone else in front of them. Then I killed the person they were cheating with, leaving just the original couple. I repeated the experiment with the other partner and then put the original couple together. They freaking hated each other. I also ran a torture room to see if it had any effect on productivity with learning skills and money making. The subject was put in a chamber with a treadmill and forced to run as much as possible. A downtime of 4 hours each day was given for learning, painting and 2 hours of sleep. I discovered that if you want to be sadistic and still get good results, you have to torture them in intervals. So a day of treadmill, then a day of learning painting. Oh, and there was the time I infiltrated a family home that I wanted. I married my way in and killed off the family one by one in an attic death chamber. Good times. I had this middle-aged Sim I took outside the house and built half a pond around him, and half a cliff. I left room for nothing but a fridge, made him eat until he got really fat and cried all the time because he was ashamed. I took his toilet away so he peed himself on the rug I installed on his island. I made sure he was in full view of everyone on the street and in the house. Eventually I took the fridge away and let him slowly die of starvation. I also took a small child outside in the backyard and caved in all the ground around him so he was surrounded by nothing but an empty black pit. He didn't have room to do anything but stand there. He became desperate for social interaction long before the starvation set in, because nobody would talk or interact with him. Social services eventually came when he verged on dying. I tried to block their access to the house by locking the doors, but they opened them anyway and got inside the house. I removed the doors and every exit, but they walked straight through the walls. Social services then used their voodoo witch magic to teleport the child out of the whole platform in the backyard, and walked the child through the walls of the house back to the car and drove away. If only real life social services were that good. I would put 8 people to a house, make them all get in the pool, then take away the ladder to get out, and they'd all drown and leave tombstones behind. I'd repeat this several times until there were dozens of tombstones on the property, sometimes close to 100. Then I'd build a little house with a single person living there. Having that many graves made it inevitable that ghosts would rise every night and terrify my lone guy until he died from lack of sleep. I built a zoo once, with people. I made a woman sim frick almost all the men in the town. She would break up marriages and families. It was hilarious. I have a guy sim that does this. He has so many kids. I'm gonna have to reset my game or move in new families because soon enough they won't be able to reproduce because they're all related. Peter is the town ho and he never stops. I used to work on the game. While developing the Sims 1 expansion pack Mark in Magic, we discovered that cars had always been flagged as flammable but never caught fire because of the natural fire break of the sidewalks. We found this out when someone's misbehaving baby dragon walked out into traffic, torched the school bus, and all the neighborhood kids stumbled off the bus in flames. I admit to testing this a few times after it was discovered, but before it was fixed. In the one with the black eyed peas, I made him listen to the radio. You're a frickin' animal. I just started a new challenge where I have to arrest the entire town. I built a prison on the 64x64 lot my sim lives on. The whole town will live out their lives in a 4x4 cell. This is brilliant. I love this. I starved my sim's wife to death because she was pregnant and my sim wasn't ready to raise a child. It wasn't quick enough though when she had the baby right before she died, so I starved that baby too until it was taken away. This sim is also the extramarital son of a married man, and later went on to have a baby with his father's wife, and his father is raising this child thinking it's his own even though it's actually both his grandchild and his stepchild. Maybe not the most cruel but certainly the funniest and easiest way to mass murder Sims. Indoor fireworks carpet firebomb. Basically you have a room completely covered in overlapping carpet except for one square. Put a fireworks stand somewhere in the room and have a sim light it. Now all Sims nearby are programmed to come watch the fireworks so everyone is in that room. When the fireworks are done the waste lands on the one empty square, and since it's indoors that one square catches fire. Now this is where it gets fun. That one square of fire will have to spread to the next square, and an item like a carpet doesn't just catch half on fire, the entire 6 squares of the carpet catch on fire, and since all the carpets are overlapping, the entire room suddenly goes ablaze including all the Sims in it who came to watch the fireworks. I got everyone including the men pregnant and kept them that way. I usually start off playing the game normally, but then I get bored and start trying to come up with new and innovative tortures. I'll list the ones I can think of. When I had the Sims 2 I'd build a little room just big enough for one sim and a piano. I'd force them to play the piano until they either starved to death or went insane. In The Sims 3 I created a guy who had the hydrophobic tray. I built a swimming pool in the middle of the kitchen so he'd have to confront his biggest fear every time he wanted to get to the fridge. I made a guy with the neurotic and neat trays. I kept him in a fence in the middle of the kitchen with a lawn sprinkler going constantly. He'd freak out and get out a mop every time the water pooled on the floor. I left him in there until he starved to death. I created Sim Survivor. I'd build a giant mansion with a ton of rooms and then move in a family of 8. I'd let them go and whichever room they walked into was the room I trapped them. I put the game on fast forward and waited to see how long it would take them to die. The one in the bathroom died first. The two in the kitchen took the longest to go, so eventually I had to resort to a line of chairs in front of a fireplace. I built 2 small houses on the same property. I moved a woman into each house and had a guy who was in relationships with both of them. I kept the women separated so they wouldn't get jealous, but the guy could go back and forth as he pleased via a hallway I built. He managed to knock up both women at the same time. While they were giving birth, he ran back and forth between the 2 houses screaming. In The Sims 3, I invited a neighbor over, then decided he would never be allowed to leave again. I lured him into a kennel I had built in my basement, then locked the door. Inside his kennel he had a stove, fridge, a table for one, and a bed. He would be my Sim's new personal chef. After a few hours, he said he really needed to leave, as though that would sway me. Of course it didn't. He persisted, but my Sim continued watching TV upstairs, ignoring his pleas. I had planned for him to cook my Sim meals, but he didn't seem to want to use the stove at all. As punishment, I took away his bed. He could sleep well enough on the floor when he passed out anyway. For a few days, he seemed alright eating quick meals from the fridge. After about a week, though, he seemed to be losing his will to live, as he stopped making himself food. The only way I could get him to eat was if my Sim prepared food for him and I drug it down there to his little table. Lack of human contact seemed to really be wearing on him. It only took 2 weeks to completely break him. He stopped eating the meals I was cooking for him. I, being a merciful kidnapper, decided it was time to release him. I ordered a pizza for him and had my Sim personally bring it to him. He refused to eat it. I unlocked the gate on his kennel and let him leave. He seemed confused by my mercy and stood there for a few moments, looking at his fridge and complaining of hunger. Finally though, he seemed to realize he was free, saying once more that he needed to leave. He exited his kennel for the first time in 2 weeks. It seems a lack of human interaction and very irregular sleep patterns can really screw up a Sim. He walked up the stairs, went to the front door and walked out to see the sun for the first time in a long time. He stood in the front yard for an entire day, basking in the sun. That was where he died. Just at sunset on his 16th and final day in captivity, he succumbed to starvation, finally having tasted the freedom he long sought. A bit poetic, if you think about it. Oh god, I can't do it. I can't live on the outside anymore, man. I used to make my house super far away from the street, have my Sims order pizza, and when the delivery guy was walking back to his car after dropping off the pizza, I'd pause the game and create a giant fence around him. He then had to starve and watch as other pizza guys walk by and fall to the same fate. My Sims loved it though. So much pizza. The first time I played The Sims 4, I made a family of 4 iconic leaders: Stalin, Obama, Churchill, and Hitler. Everything was going swimmingly except for the fact I had Adolf Hitler. So, I transformed the old bathroom into his Harry Potter cupboard. Inside was a cheap bed and a crappy PC. The deal was that for every novel he wrote, I would drag a meal into his room so he could eat. So I would play the game normally with the other 3 leaders just goofing around while Hitler sat back writing romantic novels titled "Please Let Me Out." Till that I need to buy The Sims. Used a cheat code to move a dirty dish into a walled off room. The Sim, often an uninvited guest, deeply hungry and near death, would eat it. Instead of being their salvation, it was only a temporary reprieve from starvation, but it would make them violently ill, so instead they would be miserable and puking while the starvation continued onward. The lady of the house would sit on the opposite side of the wall and practice a merry ragtime piano song while her guests were tormented. When I was in middle school, I dated a girl, as much as any white 13-year-old does. We held hands at school and I grazed her boob once. She lived in the neighborhood and would come over to play The Sims. I had the original and, at one point, all the expansion packs because I know how to treat a lady to a good time. Anyways, we had our family, got pretty far in the game, and she broke up with me IRL. She threw away everything we worked for together, and I had just bought her a $5,000 TV. That hollet. I played the game a week or so later when my raging hormones had calmed down, and that's when my dark work began. I built the usual $fire trap to kill her, when a voice deep inside me said no. 4 Strex. Her suffering is only beginning. I wouldn't hear that voice again until I turned 26 and I became a baby seal clubber. Baby seals freaking hate clubs. So my ex-girlfriend's avatar became my dark plaything. I used that clipping cheat to move things she was using that ordinarily you couldn't. Every time she went to eat a delicious bowl of macaroni and cheese, I deleted it from the game. Every time she went to take a shower, I deleted the shower. Every time she went to take a crap, I deleted the toilet. I made our avatars mortal enemies. I maxed out my fitness stat and would regularly beat the crap out of her. I kept her alive between regular beatings, stinking and living in a cordoned off area of the house on the minimum of food. I like to think I was allowing her to eat rat carcasses, but I think it was spaghetti. Finally, one day she started a fire trying to make a bowl of cereal and died surrounded in her own filth. I took her gravestone and put it in a pen filled with llamas who crap constantly. It was a mod before the Unleashed expansion came out. That computer is still in my parents' basement. I like to think that game is still going, and her spirit never found the rest it yearned for so badly, because it's being crap on by llamas. We cool now go. She met my wife last summer. We had a few beers and caught up. I created a male sim that looked female and a female sim that looked male, made them a couple, built a house with a big basement and locked the gender bending family in it to breed underneath a normal family living in the house. Force the guest, S, to eat all the food, watching them unwillingly become morbidly obese. Found the grandma. Adopting kids and feeding them to cow plants to get essence of life. Back when I had the first Sims for PC, I used to download a lot of objects off the web. There were mood boosters, computers you could learn all skills from, you name it. There was dynamite. 3 seconds after placing the dynamite on the lot and going to live mode it would explode. Have this huge freaking fire. So I started playing a game, almost like some sick twisted reality show. I would create a family and move them into this empty house and seal them in. There would be a ton of mood booster stations and I would place dynamite everywhere, then just go to live mode and see what happens and who was the survivor. Then I'd just drown the survivor in the pool and move in a new family and start the process over. You could move the survivor to another house, then start the process again and repeat until you have enough survivors in the second house. Then blow up that house and see who survives. Then move them to another house. It never ends. Made a sim of a guy I had a crush on who rejected me pretty harshly when I tried to ask him to homecoming. Made him a beautiful woman. Made them fall in love. Made them have children. Made him overeat. Made him fight with his kids until they hated him. Made him fight with his wife until she hated him too and divorced him. Took away everything in the house that provided any fun value. Took away the door so he couldn't get out and get anything. Watched him sit on the couch and cry. Felt better about the situation. It really fricked up people. The Sims brings out everyone's inner sadist. Okay, I don't need you anymore. Let's get rid of you. About 9 years older to mates created ourselves and the girls we liked. Also the guys who liked them as well starved them, cornered them off while we got jiggy with the girls. Killed every family member with the sole exception of the dog, who was forced to go to the neighbors to find food. Yeah, but that's okay because you didn't kill the dog. I let them be happy. They will curse my name into the bloody tomb of grievances and rot. 2 brothers, Shady McChuckles and Drog. Drog was my painter goblin and Shady was a shifty mofo. Shady flirted with everyone. Hey look, a neighbor. She's rich, better seduce her. Oh crap, she's military. Better walk away slowly. Another rich neighbor. Flirt with her. She doesn't like it. Her husband comes home. Flirt with him. He really doesn't like it. Then my computer died, comma. This isn't even that sadistic, but it's freaking hilarious. Dedicated long-time simmer here. Still a simmer who plays at least every week 4 hours at a time. It's hard to pin down the most sadistic thing, but once I built a basement in The Sims 4 to trap neighbors in, and I would put them behind glass so my sim could paint them and take pictures of them as they slowly die of starvation and pee themselves. Made a red versus blue game file where all the people I put it were from RVB and decided that canon deaths in the game would be a good idea. I cried and made a new game. I use a lot of mods. I moved my character into an occupied house I wanted. gaining control over all the NPCs who lived there. Then for giggles, I made the wife NPC massively fat and ugly using mods. Then I hosted a party in the park and invited a lot of people. Then I gave the wife a gun and had her commit suicide in front of everyone, including her husband and son. I had the good host lifetime reward, so everyone had a good time. I made the devil and he was a total dong. Stole stuff and made people cry on the reg. He was married to an angel. I was curious to see how their kids turned out. Slowly it became a cheesy 80s sitcom. Killed them, haha. Starve them to death. Electrocute them. Drown them. Watch them burn in a fire. Send their kid to military school. That last one was oddly specific. I forget what Sims game specifically it was, but there was an option for a pool in either a capital T or capital I shape. Either way, because of how the grid system works, if you put the biggest diving board I can, which reaches 2 spaces over the pool, in the right spot, you can make the Sims swan dive head first into the ground. But they didn't die first impact. I think it was after the 3rd impact they pass and they leave a gravestone next to the pool where they landed. Next Sim just eats crap into a stone grave marker, so on and so forth until they all died. Build a prison in my house and locked away everybody who came to welcome me to the neighborhood. Sadly after a while they all just teleported out. I would throw parties and lure the guests with burgers in a fence and then close it. That was my own little zoo. Sims 2 PlayStation 2. I was around 11-13. I made a spiral pool and put a ladder on the outside. Sims get in. I put a ladder all the way in the center and delete the old one. Then when the Sims were almost at the center ladder, I put one on the outside and deleted the center ladder. Eventually they drowned. You've encountered the lost treasure of Captain Gus Fishhead. Subscribe to receive some of his gold. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day, you magnificent people.